President Trump is gearing up for a major coronavirus vaccine summit at the White House later today. He's set to emphasize his America First strategy when it comes to vaccine production and distribution, despite facing mounting criticism over his pandemic response. This comes as the New York Times reports the Trump administration passed on a chance to buy even more doses of the Pfizer vaccine over the summer. So for more on this, we want to bring in Weijia Jiang. She's following the latest at the White House. Weijia, what do we know about this report? We talked a little bit earlier about it because it sounds like on the surface that the Trump administration passed on buying more vaccines, which means that, Pfizer simply sold the vaccine doses to other countries. Is that what we're talking about here? And why did they?
Right. So apparently, back in July, the U.S. signed a contract with Pfizer to purchase 100 million doses. That will serve 50 million Americans. But they had more to sell. But at the time, the government reportedly said no to that. And, Pfizer is a private drug company. If they have additional doses, of course, they want to try to sell it. And so they offered them to other countries. And now Pfizer reportedly is confirming that because those other countries locked in their own contracts, there won't be additional supply for the U.S. to purchase until June or July of next year. Now, senior administration officials insist that by that time, there will have already been enough doses to vaccinate all Americans anyway. And that is the target timeline, which is the middle of next year. So now this question becomes whether if the administration had purchased more of these Pfizer vaccines when it had the chance to do so, would that timeline look different? Could there be a widely available vaccine to all Americans earlier than that time target that we're looking at now, which is the middle of next year? But that's talking in the past. So right now, the White House is trying to focus on the future and saying that, rest assured, there will be plenty of doses for people in the coming months.
And, we should also let people know that we do have this Moderna vaccine that should be coming shortly behind the Pfizer vaccine. And so perhaps those will be options. That'll be an option for people as well. But yeah. Weijia, the president is holding this vaccine summit. He's expected to sign an executive order focusing on getting Americans the vaccine first. What can you tell us about this executive order?
So the president plans to sign it today during that summit, which will be held here at the White House this afternoon. But administration officials are really struggling to answer exactly what it will do. That includes the chief scientific officer for Operation Warp Speed, and that is Moncef Slaoui, who appeared on television this morning, and he said, frankly, I literally have no idea what the president's executive order is going to do. And so that's pretty telling when you have one of the two main leaders of the entire project saying he doesn't know in practice why the president is signing this, because the intent of the order is to make sure all of the doses that are procured, meaning purchased and obtained by the U.S. government, goes to Americans first. Well, even if he weren't going to sign this executive order, it would seem that, of course, U.S. doses would go to Americans first. The second piece of the order lays out a time frame and sort of a framework for when the U.S. might consider donating and giving out vaccines to other countries who are in need. So, officials say this just falls in line with the president's America First policy. But again, it still begs the question why it's necessary at all.
Well, we know that the president has tweeted and said very little about the pandemic, very little about the hundreds of thousands of Americans who have died, except to speak about his administration and the vaccine development and Operation Warp Speed. And so perhaps this is part of sort of reinforcing that portion of the message that he's more comfortable speaking about at this time.
Right.
So speaking of this vaccine summit that's happening, the president-elect, Joe Biden, he's not going to be there. How is the White House and the president-elect's team coordinating on the pandemic response, especially when it comes to vaccine distribution? Because it is the Biden administration which will be picking up most of the work come the new year on this distribution.
And members of the incoming administration have really expressed frustration over a lack of cooperation with the Trump administration. Of course, we know there was a massive delay in triggering that transition in an official capacity. And even now, it's unclear, exactly what meetings are happening. We do know that some members of the task force, the coronavirus task force, have met and are meeting with their counterparts on the Biden team, but there's no real clear, detailed plan that we know about as far as how many meetings are happening, what's going on in these meetings. And that's because the White House says, look, all the details about the vaccine distribution are on our website, and the Biden team is free to go look it up. Even today, for this vaccine summit, the White House says we did not invite any of the members of the Biden administration because the event is going to be streamed online live and they're free to watch it. But that's very different from engaging with current federal health officials who really have, drawn all the plans for the distribution and are able to answer important questions from those who are going to be in charge. And so President-elect Joe Biden has certainly talked about this extensively and said that they need more transparency and more work with the current White House to make sure Americans are ultimately reaping the benefits and protected when they take over on January 20th.
Weijia, before I let you go, got to ask you about this. The Trump administration has fully restored the DACA program, and it's now accepting new applicants following a court order. This is huge. Especially when it comes to the president's hardline immigration policy. He had halted the acceptance of new DACA applications and left thousands essentially in limbo for the duration of his presidency. So tell us about just how important this is and what comes next.
So this is a major victory for DACA recipients and for about 300,000 young people who are eligible to apply for the DACA protections. Of course, these are minority children who are undocumented, who come to the United States with, their parents or with other adults, and they are minors. And, the DACA program, the guidelines that were established under the Obama administration are really meant to give them some shield. It doesn't mean that they can automatically apply for citizenship and a green card, but it does allow them to get work permits and deferrals on deportation as they wait to see, what avenues they can pursue for citizenship. And from the very beginning, the Trump administration wanted to repeal this. They promised that they would. So this is very important for these young immigrants, that they're able now to have the fully restored protections that were granted under the Obama administration. Now, this doesn't mean it's the end, right? Because there are Republican attorneys generals who are trying to contest this in court, and we don't know who's going to control the Senate come January 20th, and that could make an impact as well for trying to reverse this policy, although Joe Biden has promised to keep these protections in effect. So despite what the president had promised and despite what his goal was, he was not able to accomplish that. And lawyers who represent these young immigrants even say this is a surprise for them. They did not expect that DACA and all the protections would remain intact for the duration of the Trump administration, but they are.
Yes. Well, Weijia, thank you so much.
Sure.